Hey my friends, welcome back to a new video. Today we'll be talking about how to end your negative cycle. You know, when we find ourselves in a state where we feel kinda off the track, when we feel like we wanted to start something and we didn't, and we wanted to start something else and we didn't, and suddenly we find ourselves like not knowing what's truly going on, and we feel that low mood of laziness, of being kinda that brain fog, and not knowing what went wrong, and we want to recalibrate ourselves, reset ourselves, but we don't know how. We don't know how to shift that cycle. So that's something that happened to me often, and most probably if you're an artist or a creative person, it may be happening to you often, because when we are really creative by nature, we are maybe not so well organized, because often people who are really creative are not so well organized, and people who are really organized are usually not so creative. And if we're really extreme about one side or another, it may often happen to us that we fall off the track, that track that is kind of really flowy, really fluid, the track that we would describe as right now I'm in the flow, right now everything is moving so well in my life. And for example, sometimes we may design certain routines and rituals in our day that can allow us to move with that flow of nature, flow of life. But then there are the days where we maybe start our day a bit differently, and we don't do the things we are usually doing, and it pulls us a bit out of that track, and suddenly things start to go wrong, and more things start to go wrong, and more things start to go wrong, and suddenly we don't know what to do. Suddenly we don't know how to put ourselves back to that flow, right? So because I am a creative person, it happened to me so many times that I needed to design for myself a plan how to reset myself and put myself back onto flow. Because we all know that our brain and our mind works like a computer, and sometimes when computer goes out of that harmonious working flow, we need to reset it, or we need to recalibrate the program or whatever it is. And for us, it's the same, my friends. We need to learn how to reset the system and start it over again with everything we know. So if you may find yourself, maybe today, and I often see in comments so many people being in that negative cycles, in those negative cycles, and usually when we are in the cycles, we wish that we would find an easy path that would just make a magic in our lives. But what we are not looking for is how to reset and create a positive momentum. And that's what we are talking about. Always, we're talking about reset, vision, and positive momentum. That's like the middle point, because we need to find the middle point. And that's what I want to talk today about, because this is something that helped me so much, and that's something I'm using every time I fall off the track, so I can find the flow again, and I can do what I need to do, what I want to do, and I can take action, and I can stay inspired and motivated to do what I truly want to do. So what are the steps? Well, I've written here, and today I'm using this board because for those kind of videos it's much better to understand the process. So anytime you find yourself in any kind of a negative cycle, maybe somebody said something to you, maybe you wanted to do certain things and you didn't because of certain reasons, maybe what you were doing, or you've been a part of a certain event that put you into the negative cycle, somebody said something to you, or something went wrong, or whatever it is, and suddenly you fall into that cycle, and it may be going on for days, but at some point you get to that rock bottom where you experience a wake-up call, like, okay, I want to change something, so what to do? Well, the first thing I do when I find myself in that cycle is I stop, I pause, like I say, oh, okay, wait a minute. I pause and I ask myself, well, where this process has started, where I've started falling off the track. And you need to look into your memories and recognize where you've started falling off the track. What happened? For how much time you're already going out of that motion? And at what point it became so disturbing that you just don't want to do, you just don't want to be there anymore. So you start noticing at what point you've started losing the track. So you recognize what happened, what you did, how you've reacted. That's how we are learning from our own unconscious patterns. We are always studying ourselves. We are usually seeking the distractions, but we need to get into the perspective of a student to recognize how can we study our own patterns, so we can notice what triggered us to go out of that flow state. So the first thing I do, I stop and reflect. I observe myself, like what really happened. For example, usually I have my morning routines quite well organized. I start a day with meditation, I read a book, I journal, or at least I write my thoughts down. Then I go outside for a run, usually at the time of the sunrise. I do a workout, and if I do those things, my creativity is on the peak state. I feel really good about everything that's going on in my life. But sometimes I feel like I need to sleep a bit more, and I will not wake up at the time that I usually wake up. And then I recognize, well, I don't have time for the book or for journaling or for workout or whatever it is. And suddenly I feel like, okay, something is pulling me out. And I need to observe what's going on, and I need to, be as gentle as possible towards myself so I don't start that automatic self-blaming. And it's all about observation, right? And for that you need to stop yourself and reflect when this process started to happen. This is the first step. The second step is acceptance. Because when you start to feel like something negative, you've started losing the path, the flow, and you've started blaming yourself, because this is usually the automatic reaction. We start blaming ourselves. Oh, I'm unworthy. Oh, again, this is happening to me. Oh, I'm trying so hard and this is happening to me. Well, the thing is that we're learning. Like they say, the trial of errors, right? We only grow because we fail. If we don't fail, it means that we're not trying anything new. And if we're not trying anything new, it means that we are staying the same. And because nature is constantly changing, if we're staying the same, it means that we're holding to something old, which means that we are not moving with the flow of nature, which means that we are being stuck. And in order to go with the flow of nature, it means that you're trying new things. Each new day may bring some refreshment to your life, which means maybe some new insights, some new inspiration. You feel a change, like I need to change something. You feel like you want to do something new. And that's how nature is reminding you, well, it's time to go on, to move on, to explore your potentials. And if you're not doing that, it means that you're not fully researching who you truly are, which means that you are living in a certain box that was made by conditioning, by everything you've heard as you were growing up. And it's time for you to step outside of it and rediscover everything that life is calling you for. And for that, you need to firstly accept that state you are in. So you stop blaming yourself, but you actually recognize, well, okay, something happened, I've fallen off the track, and it's okay, right? It's not your fault. You're learning because you don't know everything. So it's not your fault that those things are happening. It's just a part of life. And acceptance will help you to see things clearly, which means that it will help you to understand your automatic behaviors and reactions and emotional response more clearly. And that is really beautiful. It's not always easy, but it doesn't need to be easy, right? Acceptance will make it easier. So once you accept any kind of emotional state you find yourself in, you will just say, oh, okay, I feel this right now. Okay, I'm human. Are you human? I'm human. I feel this right now. Okay. So the third step then is to recognize what you've learned in that process of a negative cycle. Like what you will stop doing. You know, for example, for me, when it happens, usually it happens that way, that I start my day a bit differently. Or something distracts me in the morning, or something important happens and I need to take care of it, and it puts me off my usual flow. Because morning for me is the most creative part of the day. But if something important happens, or for example I go to travel and I can't do the same things as I'm doing at home or things like that, sometimes those things may put me off the flow, and at the beginning I don't even recognize that something is changed, like that it is affecting on me. But longer I'm ignoring that something is off the track, more disturbing it becomes. Until at some point I notice, well, I'm losing inspiration, I feel like my energy is falling, I feel like I'm not as productive as I usually am in my natural state, and I feel less meaning for everything than usually. And to me, those are signs that I am going off the track. Because when I am in that flow state of life, for me, everything is like on the peak state. I feel really, really creative. I see meaning in everything. I feel motivated to do what I'm doing because I just feel like I need to do that. I'm connected with my inner calling, so I know what I need to do. If I don't feel those things, it means that, well, maybe I'm going too far away from myself. Meditation is a powerful recalibration at this point, because it puts you from all that mental chattering and external distractions and everything that may be happening in your life. It puts you back to your inner observation, to become more familiar with what's going on, you know, everything you've perceived, where you've lost yourself, and so on. So you need to recognize what this process of falling off the track taught you. What this process taught you, and what will you change next time that it repeats. Like, for example, when somebody said something to you and it triggered within you many different lower emotions, and after that for more days you've been kind of feeling unworthy and you've been judging yourself like you're a bad person. Well, it happened. But what have you learned in that process? How would you respond differently next time? Because that's when you're teaching yourself to be a bit more conscious in that process. This self-observation is so important because it reminds us of what we need to learn, right? what kind of books to read or videos to watch that can help us to observe our patterns a bit more consciously. This is really important. So, what have you learned and what to change? And then the fourth thing I do is I reset myself. So again, I firstly stop and reflect when it started to happen. I accept how I feel, what I've learned in that process, and then I reset myself. And what I mean by that, I do something that will completely reset me. It can be a meditation, it can be a cold shower, it can be a workout, it can be a long walk or a short walk in nature or run, but something that will really reset you. What I usually do, I go into, I have that pull for cold therapies, I go into the cold water because it's the fastest possible reset for me. Because usually when we go into the slower emotional states and we lose ourselves there, it's the chemistry in our body that's really disturbing, and we feel that. That's what emotions are. It's that disturbing chemistry that awakens stress within our bodies, that is just reminding us something is off and we need to take care of it. And for example, if I go into the cold water, and you don't need to do that, but you need to find something that will reset you. For me, cold water is the fastest form of that reset. It resets the chemistry in your body, and it will put you back into that state of presence. Meditation can also work, but the right one, if you just meditate but you don't really know how, it may not be effective and this process will not work. So you need to find something that truly resets you, usually something that is really unpleasant. You don't grab a chocolate and eat it and hope that it will reset you. You need to find something that is unpleasant, like something you don't usually do, like a slow yoga flow, or some stretching, or you draw a black dot onto a white wall or onto a piece of paper and you just watch it for 5 minutes. Something you usually don't do. It will reset your system and suddenly you will get at peace with yourself. And when you're at peace with yourself, you're not in negative cycle anymore. You've resetted yourself. It's like plugging computer out of electricity and plugging it back once again. That's what it will do. And in that reset state, you get back to what you actually need to do, what you actually want to do. Back to your responsibilities, whatever it is, and make a plan. Write a to-do list, make a plan. How will you start? What's the most important thing? Start with the first most important thing. Go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And it will lead you to the organized action. Because we need to have certain organized system so we can function, right? So we can express ourselves creatively. We all have certain responsibilities. And usually, when we fall into the negative cycle, we don't want to take care of responsibilities anymore. But because we know we need to take care of them, we start blaming ourselves even more because we feel lazy. It's the chemistry that is making you feel that way, and you need to reset yourself. But it will not be enough if you reset yourself if you don't accept what you feel. Because if you don't accept what you feel, you will just suppress it. So if you reset yourself without an exception of what's happening, you will suppress those emotions, which means that you haven't learned anything from them. And if you haven't learned anything from them, the next time this situation will repeat, you will do the same thing as before. Which means that you haven't got any wiser from falling off the track. Which means that it was just a waste of energy. And I always want to learn from what happens, so the next time I can respond to it a bit differently. And that is called self-observation and learning from our own errors, right? That's how we are getting wiser. And it's not often an easy process. But once we recognize what we've learned, it becomes really pleasant because we notice that we are truly functioning completely uniquely to our own needs, to our own state of awareness. And this is important to know because we can read many different books from many different authors, but we recognize that we are functioning completely uniquely to ourselves. So it doesn't matter what we read, what we find outside of us. Only once we start learning from our own behaviors, we can know what truly works. And that's what helps me to know myself better. So I hope you found something valuable today, a bit different video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm sending you lots of love, blessings and power. Have a beautiful day, and till next time, one love.